go from start to finish and how the process works. So the main thing involved is people. We've had about 8,000 people involved and many more driving, helping clean and do other things. So yeah, we'll talk about that. So a little about who I am. In sort of normal life, I'm a video engineer. I work on sort of live events and theatre and also program video. So here's a project I did last year in the United States for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo mission. And this was a company called 59 Productions. This is what I work on generally, so projection and LED screens. It's probably one of the biggest events I did last year. And here you can see we're working, and so mainly what I do is sort of sequence videos and make sure they work to time with the show and work with the designer for how the show is meant to look. So first of all, we're going to talk about the design of the shield. So these were made by Joseph Prusa, who runs a company in the Czech Republic. They started in 2012, creating printers. So the design is open source for their printers and for the face shield. They've now grown to nearly 200 people, and they sell about 6,000 printers a month. This is their design of printer. And that's what they mainly set up to sell. So the face shield is called a Prusa RC3, and it's made of 4 main components that you can see here. So the 2 3D printed components are the orange ones, and they consist of a top band and a chin piece that helps to keep the shield in the right shape. Then we've got a piece of elastic that's used to secure it to people's heads around the back. And then there's a visor that attaches to the front on these points you can see around there. And so there were other designs for the face shields first. There's the RC1, which you can see has got more of a curve. And they changed that because they felt it was pinching on people's heads here and it wasn't as comfortable to wear. So then the RC2, they opened that up and they kept, you can't really see it in this picture, but there's holes around the forehead and people were finding those uncomfortable. So they ended up with the RC3, which is what we've been making. So a few of the advantages of this are that they can be stacked when they're printed. So you can see here, it's a website called mod.sebly.me, and people have been using that to be able to create their STL files that they can then print. And that was sort of part of the original design, was making sure that one printer could print a handful of them without having to be checked on. So this is my printer, and here's one of the parts that I printed. It's a Losbot, and I've printed about 40 pieces now. So across the country, we've got 8,000 people printing. They vary from individuals, one printer like myself, to people who've got whole print farms of 20 or more printers, and they can churn out like up to 100 or so a day. And some of them have worked with their companies for sponsorship to help them buy materials and printers and try and expand that. So it all starts, once people have printed them, they get taken to their local hubs, and the local coordinators will help collect them. Quite often they're in people's houses, and they'll be collecting from up to a couple of hundred of people and getting all their prints together. They'll QC them and just check that there's no faults, and if there is, help feed that back to the maker on what they can improve. And we've got a lot of, in the community, people helping each other and sort of putting together ideas of how they can improve their prints, problems they might not have faced before that other people have, and sort of help each other that way. So then they'll get sent on, sometimes to a regional hub, where they'll get collected into bigger batches, and then they'll go into a cleaning hub. So this was one of my main contributions to 3D Crowd, was we were donated a space by a company called Nega, who have a rehearsal venue in Park Royal called LH2, and they donated the space for a month, and we were able to clean nearly 5,000 there. And each day we'd try and get up to 500, and work through those. So they'd come in, we'd separate them into batches of 50, separate them into the two materials. We had PLA and PETG, and wash those up. So first they'd go into a tub of Milton. They'd sit in those for 15 minutes. Milton was partly chosen because it's very easy to get hold of. It's in pretty much every supermarket shelf and it's pretty cheap. So we leave those to soak 15 minutes and then take them out and hang them up. There you can see I'm trying to organize them by color. It did become a bit of an OCD obsession. And then we'd leave them probably overnight and let them dry. We just had the chin pieces laid out. And then we'd also have, for the visor cleaning, which I haven't got any pictures of, we either soak them in Milton or IPA, and then use a squeegee to make sure they're not too streaky. The Milton dries on them quite heavily, and make sure people can see properly. Yeah, I learned a lot doing this. It's obviously not what I normally do, but we got a lot of friends in. There's probably 10 or 20 people who came to help, and it was, yeah, really impressive. Everyone who asked was willing to come along. Yeah, maybe just to get out of the house, but who knows. So then once they've been cleaned and dried, we'd bag them up. So we would bag them into 5s, and we'd then box them up into bigger batches, and we'd send them across to the other hub in North London, and they'd put them into orders and send them out. One of the things we just did was left them for 72 hours to make sure there's definitely, do our best to make sure that there's nothing left in there. And that's why it's got the sealed date on. So then once they're at the hub, they'll look at the orders. So we're using a program called AppSheet that Tim, who was talking a minute ago, put together. And he made this program basically that collated all the orders, and all the coordinators could look and see what orders were active and what we needed to fulfill. So we had a number of regional and local coordinators who'd call and try and find out how many people need and check they still need them, and then organize someone to deliver them. So across the country now, we've delivered over 185,000, and we're still going. Each day now, we're averaging about 800. And then within London alone, we've delivered 50,000. And that's cut up into different regions, bits of London. And so there's a lot of people who, even though they aren't printing, are helping phone orders, organize transport, and make sure stuff gets to where it's needed. And so a lot of our transport is delivery drivers who have volunteered, people in their cars who are just willing to help out. And there was some relays, as talked about earlier, that people would drive a section of a journey when it was a very long journey, and they'd all meet each other on motorways, in parks, to hand over the kit and manage to get things all the way across the country. And another one of our big things has been Bike Shed, who have really helped out with hundreds of deliveries. They're a volunteer group similar to us, who are just happy to deliver stuff on motorbikes. And they've set up a really nice way of being able to book it in an app, and it just happens. And it's been really useful. And then finally, they make it out to the people who need them. So here's a selection of pictures from across the country. And it really is incredible to see sort of all the different places they go to. Yeah, right the way from theatres all the way to care homes, doctors' surgeries, where people can make sure they've got the protection they need. So we'll just see now if there's any questions. So we've got one about how and why I got into 3D printing. So myself and my partner Leo, we first got a MakerBot and didn't have a huge amount of success. It was maybe not quite what we'd hoped for. And then later on, we actually upgraded to a LobsterBot TAS 6, which has been great. And we've printed a lot for work, some little project boxes, little bits for around home and stuff like that.